Mr. Kip Sorensen, what's up, man? Great to see you, brother.
Good to see you as well, man. How was your week?
It was good. We didn't do a whole lot. The kids were at the two oldest were at fishing camp. Like,
That's
man,
right.
the stuff they get to do. I was like, I never got to do fishing camp, but they slayed them at fishing camp and they had a good time. We were with the little ones. It was amazing. People are like, oh, two's so hard. One having a child is hard. Having two is hard. Having three is hard. Having four is hard. It's like, it's not really. It just becomes life. It just is. But then
Yeah,
when your two oldest ones leave, you're like, having two is easy. Like
yeah,
it's so easy, especially because they're little. You just have to give them just a little bit of an attention and swim in the pool with them. So it was a good time. We had a great time, and the older
totally.
boys did as well. So it was good, man. How about you?
We have a wedding in our backyard. My wife's sister is getting married in our backyard this coming week in from Spain. And so we have this kind of, they're staying at our house and we're trying to like make sure they have a great time. So it's a little exhausting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Wait,
we went out to
she's
the lake
leaving Spain to come have a wedding in Utah? That seems
yes,
so backwards.
because her family's all here and
Oh,
he's
got it.
kind of like, he's kind of, I don't give a crap about a
Whatever.
wedding. Yeah.
Sure.
And so she's like, well, then I want to have my wedding where my family is. And so,
No,
yeah,
no.
so they're coming to Utah
All
for the wedding.
even the ladies listening can attest. Just have it in Spain. You're going to save money, and it's Spain. And if
too,
you can
too
really
late
find
now.
out, you could find out very quickly who really loves you and who doesn't. So, and
In
also,
regards to who goes to Spain.
then you
Yeah.
don't have to have a big thing. That
Yeah.
sounds like the perfect scenario, but whatever, to each their own. Good luck
Yeah.
to
Well, and
your soon to be brother-in-law.
what we may not be alluding to is my wife probably goes, well, I don't want to go to Spain. And so it's probably convinced her sister to do it in our yard because it's what's convenient for her. So my wife usually gets what she wants. And she
Props
probably
to
worked
Asia
it.
then. Props to her. Well played. Well, but
Yeah.
you could have got out of a wedding. That's what I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
that's
I'm like,
true. That's
hey.
true. Yeah. So, but it
No,
was
that should
good.
be fun.
It was
That
good.
should be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, let's get into some questions for today.
Yeah, for sure. So we're building
Also,
questions.
congratulations to the bride to be.
Oh yeah.
I'm kind of busting her chops a little bit, but congrats. We're excited for you.
Yeah. And he's a great guy. So we're happy for her.
Awesome.
All right. So we're fielding questions from Instagram to connect with Mr. Mickler there or on Twitter. That's at Ryan Mickler. And we're just going to kind of pick up from where we left off last week. So first
Can
question.
I say one thing before you
Yeah.
get to that? Since you're
Yeah.
speaking about marriage, I made a post yesterday on Twitter. I think I also made it on Instagram, and I had taken a picture of my family and I before as we got dressed up and went to church. This is
Church,
something
yeah.
we do.
Saw that.
And I made the post of I said men
Good
and then
life,
quotations mark. No, I did a different one that's a little
Oh,
bit more
okay.
controversial. So this is the one I'm alluding to. The good life, it is. Bless the good life. Hope you guys have a great Sunday, all that kind of stuff. But I made one that was more controversial. And I said, men, quote, good luck even finding a woman who wants to marry you for life, have a bunch of kids with you, and then be a committed wife and a mother for the rest of your life. And then below that, I put men, or I put also men, quote, I hate going to church. Why would any man ever go to church? And look, I'm not here. Look, there's a lot of reasons to go to church. There's a lot of reasons to have
Yeah.
the gospel in your life.
Yep.
Finding a goodly woman is one of those reasons.
Yeah.
So
that will help you also go too. Yeah.
well, and look, somebody asked, they said, well, did you meet your wife at church? I said, no, I didn't meet my wife at church. I actually met her through a friend. And then we started working in the mall together at different stores. But I started going to church with her probably 2 or 3 weeks into us dating. And I've been going ever since.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of reasons. And the reason I'm even bringing this up, obviously we're talking about marriage, but if that's something that you're interested in, then I would suggest to you that you have to go where the good women are. Like a bunch of guys are like, well, I'm finding all these like whores and these people who sleep around and have a bunch of kids. I'm like, well, where are you finding them? At the bar? Well, no shit, dummy.
Yeah.
Like that's what kind of women you're going to find there. And maybe that's okay for whatever your goal is for the weekend. But if you're looking for something more, then you need to go where the women that you want to spend time with are. Where are they? They're at church. They're at business functions. They're friends of the good women that you already know in your life. Like, go there. The same is true about women or even business. Well, I can't make any business contacts. Well, what are you doing? Well, I'm just like making cold calls. Well, okay. Of course you're not making any contacts. Like, go where the business professionals are. They're at Business Network International. They're at Rotor. They're at Chamber. They're at business functions. They're at luncheons. They're at golf outings. They're at events. Guys, there's a great book called The Proximity Principle by Ken Coleman, who's been on the podcast a couple of times. You have to be in proximity to what you want. And I'm not here to tell you that it's just going to rub off by osmosis. It isn't. Maybe to a degree, you'll pick some things up. But if you want to succeed in life, if you want to be fit, if you want to have a good woman in your life, if you want to get your finances in order, if you want to add value, if you want to do whatever, then the first step is to, in the absence of anything else, is to be in proximity to what you want. And then you start building from there and making yourself, worthy is not the right word, but making yourself, I'll just use worthy. It's not the right word, but I'll use worthy because I can't think of a better one right now. Worthy of being in the proximity of those kind of people. That's how you succeed in life.
Totally. And is that a result primarily because most opportunities present themselves through relationships? And by being in proximity, it's like,
I don't think you can have a relationship, or excuse me, an opportunity without a relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, I really can't think of an opportunity that exists in the absence of a relationship. I mean, maybe you can come up with one, but I'd have to rack my brain for a long time to think about that. So yeah, I think that's well said. I would agree with that.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting. Over the weekend, I was talking about this very subject with someone at the lake, like a neighbor's friend. And it's funny how often we lose sight of relationships being the key of things. You know, even in consulting, we'll go, oh, the client, right? It's like the client signed this out, and the client's happy or the client's not happy. No, Jason signed the statement of work.
A good distinction.
Yeah. Fred signed the proposal. They're happy. Susan's happy. Like, it's not some elusive company. It's the relationship with those specific individuals that really is the relationship with the organization. And we have a tendency sometimes to lose our humanity in that conversation. And I think it's a little bit because we remove ourselves from the pressure of it. When in reality, it's like, if someone's unhappy, a client's unhappy, it's like, well, no, that person's unhappy. And just like any other relationship, we need to address the issue. And the issue might be that we missed something and I don't know why I'm going negative here, but we missed something. And as a result, that reflected poorly on them in the organization that they work. That's the issue. It's seldom like, the client's upset. No, people are.
Well, I think one of the reasons we also do this, in addition to what you're saying, is that people typically represent the bulk of our problems.
Yeah.
It's usually people, right?
Totally.
Oh, my wife isn't doing, my boss is this way, my client isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so we strip the humanity out of it because we can't see ourselves in their shoes. And so we're like, yeah, the client's a dick. It's like, well, hold on a second. If you put yourself in that client's shoes, would you be responding the same way? You actually might be worse than the way that they're behaving if you were in that position. So I got into not a tiff, but I challenged Ryan Holiday to join me back on the podcast about a week ago, because I really like a lot of what he shares. I like a lot of his messaging in his books. I take real issue with the direction that he's gone over the past couple of years. Specifically, to me, from the outside looking in, it started with his response to COVID, and then drag queen story hour at his bookstore and things like this, which I don't agree with. But I will talk about his book. And one of the things that he says the obstacle is the way. So where people tend to complain about other people, my wife's a bitch, my boss is an asshole, my client's being unreasonable, ... if that's the obstacle, it's also the path forward.
Yeah.
So maybe instead of thinking your wife is a bitch, ask yourself, why is she behaving or acting that way? Maybe because you are the bitch and she's just
that's
mirroring
where
that.
the growth is.
Right. Yeah. Or your boss is an asshole. Well, why would he be different to you? You come in late, you show up, you don't perform the way you said you would, you leave early, you look for every excuse to get out of other opportunities to build some responsibility. Oh, my client's a jerk. Well, when's the last time you reached out to him just to see how things were going or how we could help or offer a new solution or saving some money on his insurance? You see what I'm saying? Like, the obstacle is the way. The obstacle is the people, but the path forward is also the people. So let's not strip humanity out of it, and let's try to keep people human. And look, this is hard for me, especially on social media, when somebody says, you're an idiot or you're this or that. It's like, am I? Like, if I want that person to look me objectively, or if I've said it to somebody else, and I have, I think I called somebody a moron on a live the other day, and I was like, I actually felt really bad about it. So I apologized on the live. I'm like, look, man, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. And he messaged me back. And he was like, hey, bro, I jumped in late. I was trying to throw a wrench into the system. I'm sorry. And I said, hey, all good. I shouldn't have called you a moron. That's not true. Like, you probably had some legitimate questions. Appreciate you reaching out. And it was cool. Like, it was good. So I do the same thing. And this is why I'm talking about it. But maybe just instead of thinking the person's a moron or a dipshit or an asshole or whatever, maybe consider that they're not, and they might see it differently than you, or maybe they actually see it the same as you, but you guys are using different words, or it's getting lost in translation. And let's start to put some of the humanity back into this so we can have some civil discourse.
Yeah, totally. First question.
Unless I get off on another tangent, which I might. It's very possible.
Hey, it is the Ryan.
So
I was going to say, it's your podcast. You interrupt whenever you like.
That's right.
All right. Forward, always
This is the
forward.
people show. This is not my show. This is the people show.
Oh, the people. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right. What do you got?
All right.
Only
forward,
if they
always
agree
forward.
with me, though.
Okay. How do you continue to find the motivation to be the man you are needed to be, setback after setback? I've had 4 surgeries in 6 years, 2 cervical fusions, 1 lumbar, just recently a hip replacement surgery, all from a car accident 6 years ago. Dang. So setback after setback, how do you find the motivation to still show up as the man that you need to be?
Well, I think you need to change the premise of the question first and foremost. Is it a setback? I mean, yes, from one perspective, from your physical capacity. Absolutely. I'm not trying to devalue or diminish what you're going through. I've never had to deal with anything even remotely close to what you're dealing with. The closest I have is my pectoral tear that I had about surgery on about 4 weeks ago. It's the closest I've had. You can see I'm out of my sling. I'm moving around. I'm feeling pretty good, but still I'm a little discouraged physically. Right. And I can let that translate over mentally, which I have over the past 3 to 4 weeks at times, throwing myself a little pity party and taking it out on my wife and my kids and all that kind of stuff. But also for the last 2 weeks, I've been going to jiu-jitsu. Now I don't get to train jiu-jitsu. I'm incapable of doing that at this stage, but I go and I do my workout. Well, my workout doesn't include bench press. It doesn't include overhead, actually 1 arm overhead presses, a lot of lunges, a lot of squats, a lot of sit-ups, a lot of presses, a lot of 1-arm curls, these kind of things. So when I come back, there's going to be things about jiu-jitsu that are going to be off for me. My timing is going to be atrocious. My stamina and cardio is going to be wrecked.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm going to come back and those guys are going to be like, dude, how are you so strong? I'm going to come back and be a little bit more technical, I think, than when I left, because I'm studying and drilling on the technical side of it, which is not one of my strengths. I follow a couple of accounts on Instagram that are teaching stretching and flow type movements to help work your game, even though you might not be training in the moment.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that I'm currently doing that are actually going to help me be better in a different way. So is it really a setback? In one dynamic, if I'm a one-dimensional person, yes, but I'm not. And the gentleman who asked this question is not one dimensional. So if your wife leaves you, that's a setback, but also it represents an opportunity for you to develop a deeper relationship with your kids. Also, it gives you your time to focus on a career. When I went through my separation with my wife, we had a 1-year-old son at the time, and I focused heavy on myself. I got my fitness in order. I got my finances dialed in. I started going back to church. I built some friendships. I developed some new hobbies. And you know what? Now I look back, and this was 13 years ago. It looked like a setback 13 years ago. Today, it looks like it presented a tremendous opportunity for me to become a better man. My wife and I celebrated 18 years of marriage this year. Now we have 4 children. So in the moment, it's like the stock market. You know, you got 100 grand in the stock market and you look at what it's done over 2021 and 2022. It doesn't look good. But if you zone back and you zoom out a little bit over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20, 30 years, it actually, you can't even see it.
Yeah.
And if you made the right decisions in the moment, you'll actually be better off. When I got into the financial market in 2008, 2009, which was one of the worst times to get into financial planning prior to 2021, 2022, Biden's presidency, I got into it in a really horrible time. And what I saw is people that pulled their money out of the stock market had a really, really difficult time recovering. See, they were fixated. Well, I'm losing money. Say, oh, I got to pull my money. I got to make these decisions. And they were making emotionally charged decisions to pull their, which was not good. They pulled their money out. The people that said, you know what, that stinks. Let me rebalance. Let me just keep the status quo. Let me see what I need to do, but let me keep my money in the market and we'll keep trenching forward. Those people within a period of 3 to 4 to 5 years were significantly better off than they were 5 years prior.
Yeah.
It was the ones who made emotionally charged decisions to pull their money out of the market and stop playing the game altogether. Took 7, 8, 10, 12. Some of them haven't ever recovered because they never put their money back in the market. So I got to ask you the same question. You've got these physical setbacks. Are you going to make emotionally charged decisions like sit around and drink and complain and gripe at everybody around you? Or are you going to be a 360-degree type man where you're looking at your mental well-being, your spiritual state, your finances, hobbies, friends, activities, wholesome, enjoyable recreation, and look at the other 359 degrees of your life? Or are you just fixated on this one and making emotionally charged decisions that you may never recover from?
Yeah. When I read these questions, Ryan, I immediately go to and I understand there's a dichotomy here. So I want to run this by you and like, where's the balance here? But when I first read this question, the first thought that enters my mind is your circumstances don't define you. It's what you do with them, right? Kind of more of a stoic approach of, hey, man, like ultimately success in life, in my opinion, and we have a tendency to seek after circumstances, right? We think like, oh, if I'm healthy and if my finances and circumstances are aligned, then like life is good. Is it? Or is life really good when you have setback after setback and you rise up and become a better person, constantly growing and proving and showing to your children and those that love you, like what it looks like to persevere and rise up despite of circumstance. I like that thought process, but in the same breath, you know, we're men of results, right? And you can handle setbacks all you want and rise up, and maybe you never reach the results either, right? And we want results and we want to be successful. We want to actually be healthy, not just always trying to be healthy. So I don't know, do you see what I'm asking here? Where's that balance of results versus just showing up, and showing up is powerful in itself?
Well, both can exist. Showing up can be powerful. You're proving to yourself you can be there, and winning is important. Like we're in this weird thing in culture today where winning is, you know, almost frowned upon. Heaven forbid you excel. Heaven forbid you're better than somebody else. And if you are, it's because Well, in my case, it's because
it's not
I'm a
because of your
white,
efforts. Yeah.
straight European descendant male. That's why I'm successful.
Yeah.
Like, it
He
has
gets
nothing to do with
excused.
my merit. It has nothing to do with me overcoming some sort of hardship that I've had in the past. And I really, frankly, haven't had that much. That must be my white privilege speaking.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's the society, that's the culture that we live in today. So it isn't any surprise to me that people don't want to excel. When you excel, even in school, like, I don't know how you were in school, Kip. I was pretty decent. I'm a fairly intelligent person, and my buddies would slack off and dink off, and I'd get A's and maybe a few high B's. But, I had a 3.9 to 4.0 grade average as I went through high school, even as, a dumb jock. And guess what? All my buddies would mock me about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they were doing it out of ill intent. I just think it's just what we do, right? We
It's
poke
almost
at
a
when people excel.
subconscious thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, how many of your friends and your family members, even if they're doing it in good spirits, have made fun of you since you received your black belt?
Oh, totally. Totally.
Right.
Or that I train all the time. It's like, well, why do you need to train?
Exactly.
Like, we always want to drag people down.
Exactly.
Subconsciously. It's kind of weird.
And again, I don't think most people aren't mean spirited about it. They're
Yeah.
really not. They're just kind of poking at you. So, but so both can exist. But here's what I wrote as you were saying that: balance is a verb. Guys, you need to understand balance is a verb. It's like running. You would never say, I achieved running.
Yeah.
You say, no, I am running. I achieved jumping. Like, I'm amazing. I achieved jumping. I am jumping. No, you say, I am jumping, right? It's a verb.
Yeah.
You don't say I've achieved balance. You say I am balancing. So to your question, what is the balance? I don't know. You got to figure it out as you go.
Yeah.
So my son and daughter, when we dropped our two oldest boys off to fish camp, there was this piece of wood. It was like 4 inches. It was just a little like long piece of wood, and it was a border for a garden. And immediately my daughter and my youngest son got on that wood beam, and they were just walking across it, right? Because that's what they do. They're like, hey, let's see if we can balance. And you can see they're putting their arms out and trying to, see if they can make it to the end without falling off. And then what does dad do? Well, of course, I go and push them on the shoulder, right? That's what we do as dads.
Yeah.
And what do they have to do? They have to push against it. And so I pushed, and they started to push against it. And then I faked pushed, and I moved my hand, and they fell towards me, right? Like, you get the visual cue of that. Life is the same way. When you're working, but then your wife's like, hey, you're away from the family, you're away from the kids, you're missing recitals, you're missing games. You got to do something. She's pushing on you, or life is, and you got to adjust. Oh, you know what? That's right. I am. Or when you have a new book coming out, or a critical deadline to hit, you got to lean into that a little more than maybe normally you would. And then when it's done, then you can straighten yourself back up. But balance is a verb. So let's get over this idea that we reach balance, and let's instead embrace the concept that life is an eternal struggle of balancing. And totally. I think we'll have an easier time with it.
I like that. I mean, one last comment really quick for this guy, because I want to reconnect to his ultimate question and is finding motivation. And so maybe one thing to look for, you can't help but look at the Goggins of the world, right? And other high achievers. Those men are high achieving and inspiring. Why? Because they had difficult circumstances, not because life was easy, right? You could take Goggins and then take his life, and it was all handed to him on a platter. He wouldn't be as inspirational. He's inspirational because of what he chose to do with the hand that was given to him. And so, brother, you have a tough hand, right? You have these surgeries, you have all this physical elements. Awesome. What a great opportunity for you to rise up and show people that those things aren't going to hold you back, and that you can, despite your circumstance, maintain and be healthy and rise above them.
Excellent. There's one other thing, since you evoke Goggins here. Some of these guys are highly, highly successful in one dimension.
Yeah.
Guys, I've talked with close to 400 high achievers, and bless their hearts and bless who they are. And we need obsessed people in life. We need people like that. I think Goggins is one of them because he can show us what's possible. But I don't look to Goggins as an example for me and how to lead my family. It's not somebody I look to for that.
Yeah.
Right. Because he is very fixated. And I'm not saying he's wrong. Please understand me. He's not wrong, but that's not what I want. I had a good conversation with my good friend, Pete Roberts, the other day. We went to lunch together and he said, we were talking about his target fixation on origin, American manufacturing, now the hunt line. We were talking about it. I've always admired his passion and his focus and his dedication towards his organization in this dream that as long as I've known him, which is about 6 or 7 years of bringing back American jobs in manufacturing. And he said something to me. He's like, hey, Ryan, I could never do what I do right now if I had kids your age. He's never said that to me before.
Yeah.
But he knows. He's like, man, because he's got kids.
Older
They're
kids,
older and they're almost, one's out of the nest, one is getting there. But he knows, like, he gets it. It's like, no, this is the season of my life where I can do this. 10 years ago, he was in a different season. He never could have done that. And it will change down the road. Just remember who you're following and remember what their goals are relative to yours, because they may not always be aligned. They're not wrong, but they may not always be aligned. So be very aware of that.
Yeah. The Saved Show, as you go about your day, when you are encountering God, are there moments when you are overcome with love and gratitude for life that you are living thanks to him?
Yeah, I feel that. I was going to say every day. That's not true. I feel it more when I'm present in the moment. So yesterday, again, my oldest were gone. I think they actually came home, but I think they were fishing. Dang, look at these pits, man. Like, I am burning up in here. Sorry, guys. Like, just listen this time. You don't have to watch my disgusting pits.
I just love that you brought it up. Yeah. Let's just embrace this. Okay. And by the way, I'm totally sunburned. I look like I'm red.
you look nice. You look like you got put some makeup on there to give yourself some color today.
Yeah. I hired a makeup artist to make sure I look good for the YouTube videos. Yeah.
Actually, it's all those bad chemicals in that Red Bull that you're drinking, making your face go flush, and you're not getting the proper oxygen and blood flow that you need.
It's Delta Sun. It's destroyed me a face. Anyhow, sorry.
Back to being present in the moment. I just wanted to share with you guys what it looks like when you're not present. That's why we went off tangent there for a minute. Yeah. With being present yesterday. So my two oldest, they were fishing again. They were fishing with some friends this time. They came home from fish camp and went back fishing because that's what they do. Yeah. And my two little ones said, Dad, let's go swimming. And we have an above ground pool, one of those Intex. I think it's 15 or so feet wide and it's 5 feet deep. And they're like, Dad, let's go swim. I'm like, cool, let's do it. And I was sitting there. My phone is obviously not in the pool with me. My other kids aren't hooting and hollering and pinching and poking their sisters and brothers and being obnoxious and annoying. The dogs were inside, so I wasn't having to watch them. And I was I think Trish was shopping. So it was just me and my two children. And I was just so present. They're like, let's create a whirlpool. And so we just run laps around the pool, the edge of the pool, and try to get it to go. And we were just playing. And I just looked up for a moment and I was so grateful in that moment. And I felt God's presence in that moment because I was present. And I had this unbelievable sense of gratitude and fulfillment and stillness, I would say, come over me in that moment. And part of it was because of the moment and I was present. And the other part of it was because I went to church and I really enjoyed the experience at church earlier that day. So a lot of guys will say, I hate organized religion. And I actually understand that argument. I get it. I do. And people say, well, it's done more harm than any other thing. And yes, there's been a lot of atrocious, horrible, horrific things done in the name of God. But that isn't godly. Number one, let's just clear the air on that. And people are people. We're going to sin. But the reason I like church is because it just is a good reminder and a good reset for me and a good way to remember his love in a structured environment that I'm just not sure I would get anywhere else. Now, a lot of guys will say, well, I feel closer to God in the mountains. And if you do, great. A lot of the times I can't help but feel that's a cop out because there's no structure to that. There's no dedicated, carved out time for that. And that's why prayer is important. If you're not a prayer guy, that's why meditation is important. That's why visualization time is important. Hell, that's why exercise time is important. It's an hour out of your day where you're like, nope, this is dedicated to exercising.
Yeah.
I'm going to be active throughout the day, but this is my dedicated time to this. And that's why I do like church. So I think a combination yesterday afternoon of me having those reminders and conjuring up those thoughts through a dedicated time and commitment to him and being present in the moment with the blessings, namely in this circumstance, my children.
Totally. Well, and you were mentioning earlier about who you surround yourself with, and that creates possibility and thought that you wouldn't normally generate on your own. I mean, that's just the reality, right? And so you go to a church building and you hear other people share spiritual experiences, or you read a hymn that you don't have memorized in your mind. You're taking outside influence and you're going to consider things that you wouldn't have considered otherwise. That's just reality. Yeah. And Ryan, it's funny that you say this because literally like not yesterday, but the Sunday before, for whatever reason, right? We went to church and I was like an emotional mess, not from a sad perspective, but just being moved. Like the song affected me, the way my kids looking over at my wife and my kids all sitting in a pew next to each other affected me. The message I mean, just everything was just like, man, like it recentered me. And that was made possible through the outside influence of others' messages and sharing that I didn't have it in my own head. Does it make sense? And then that allowed me to consider it. And so once again, the importance of surrounding ourselves with other individuals and the messages that they share through their action or through their words being so critical.
Agreed. Well said.
All right. Bill Collins, also known as Phil Collins. I think it's Phil Collins, actually. I'm going with Phil Collins. He says, Ryan, I just want to thank you for all you do. Good job, man.
Is that a joke or is there a reference?
No, he just wanted to say grateful. I know you don't hear that very often.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about his name.
No, I've been listening to Phil Collins all the time. So I'm like, I just want to make it a celebrity. It's Bill Collins.
Okay. I'm like, wait,
thanks.
Is it like Bill and Phil in parentheses? Or I thought maybe I missed the joke. Okay. I was wrapped up in the name. What was the question or the thing? I don't know.
He was just saying, appreciate what you do.
I'm just kidding. I heard it. I just wanted you to say it again.
Hey, you're funny. Bill, I'll send this to you a text message. Yeah.
Perfect. Bill, yes. And I'm going to frame it and put it on the wall right here because I don't get very many of those. Bill, I appreciate it, man. We do it for you guys. Well, look, I do it for you is kind of like it's a platitude we hear all the time, but it is true. I do that for you guys. You're part of the mission. You are a crucial, integral part of the mission. It's also selfish. I get a lot out of it too. So I will accept your gratitude and say thank you back for letting us do it. Because we wouldn't be able to do these things if it wasn't for you and the, thousands, hundreds of thousands of guys who tune in and support in some way.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Sam Bradway, what has been the biggest struggle you've encountered in fatherhood?
The biggest struggle
in fatherhood.
I don't think that there's just one moment that immediately comes to mind for me. I don't like to see my children hurt. That's really hard for me. Maybe my oldest son got rejected by a girl he likes, or my daughter's dance recital doesn't go as well as she would have hoped, or one of my kids strikes out at their baseball game. These are minor things in life in the grand scheme of things, but this is the stage we're at with our children. Yeah. And so regardless of what it is, I don't like to see them hurt. That's really hard for me because when they hurt, I want to come in and save them. And I realize that I can't. And I probably, in these minor instances, and even bigger ones, probably should not rescue them and let them experience it, let them feel it, let them feel disappointment. I remember when my oldest Brecken came to me, this was about 2 years ago, maybe a little over now at this point. And he had really had a hard time with his weight. He was a chunky little bugger, he's just a little roly-poly. And he felt so bad. He was embarrassed to take his shirt off. People at school were making fun of him. And I didn't like to see that. I didn't want him to deal with that. And he came to my wife and I, and he's like, hey, I think my weight, I feel fat and I don't feel good about myself. And, and I don't want to take my shirt off and kids make fun of me and I just feel dumb. And that's like stings. Like, I don't want him to feel like that. Yeah. And so I could have in that moment said, no, you're good. And you're special. You're fine. And you're beautiful. And you just need to learn how to be comfortable in your own skin. And that's what I wanted to do. Instead, her and I had made the decision that no, we're not going to coddle them. And so I decided to say, your weight has gotten out of hand. And I can understand why you would be embarrassed to take your shirt off. I've actually been there in my life. And so I get it. So what are you going to do about it? And then in that moment, like literally in that moment, you've seen it, Kip.
Yeah,
he totally changed. And some of it is he's lost the baby fat and he's, getting mature and he's getting taller, some of that, but also he has busted his tail.
Yeah. It's put work in
2 years, sacrificed, changed his dieting. I don't tell him what to eat. I'm like, hey, don't eat that. Do eat. Nope. He does it. I don't tell him anything. He tried out for wrestling. He wrestled a couple of years ago. He's been playing football for the past 6 years. Powerlifting is a big thing in his life right now. He tried jiu-jitsu, doesn't like it as much as powerlifting. So that's one of his faults, but
no one's perfect.
No one's perfect. Even my own children are not perfect. You'd think they would be if I'm their dad.
Yeah.
But man, that's a testament to being honest with your kids and then letting them feel the pain that I don't want them to experience, but it's actually the pain that caused him to change. You think about that for a second. It's the fact that somebody at school made fun of him. It's the fact that he feels embarrassed around his friends and girls to take his shirt off. And he just wants to go in the lake and swim. It's the pain that changed him because he didn't want to experience that. But society says, well, don't make people stronger. Just get rid of the pain. No, keep the pain. In fact, put your finger in the wound a little bit in a loving way and make them feel it even more in the right way so that it drives your children to action. So it's a really long answer. And then just a very short answer. I always struggle with patience when my kids aren't doing what they should, or they're not progressing the way I think they could, or they're not being kind to us or their siblings, or they're screwing up. Patience. And I lose my temper quickly. I lose my cool. Sometimes I blow up at them because I'm thinking about something else. So patience has always been an issue for me as well.
Yeah. This question's related kind of. So let's segue a little bit here. He says, the question is from Pattern a Dad, old school, sorry, Instagram names. Which is the most painful thing you see parents complaining about their children? So I'm assuming painful for you to hear these parents complain about. Yeah.
I like the way he's asking it. I kind of feel like where do I cringe when I see parents? But specifically what they complain about.
Yeah, totally. That's what I hate. That's how I'm reading it.
Anytime you complain about your children, I hate it.
Why because there's zero ownership. Like my kids are this way, AKA I play no role in it.
That's a legitimate reason. That's not why.
Oh, okay. What are you saying?
That's not wrong. Like that's a good reason. But the reason I don't like it is because those are beautiful little blessings. And what if they hear you?
Yeah.
Like, what if they hear you?
Yeah.
And also, what does the way you're talking about them, how does that spill over into the way you treat them and father them? Somebody I really admire and respect, Ben Shapiro. I know that's going to be very controversial, the fact that I even said that.
Yeah, there it goes.
But he's intelligent. He's well thought out. Like he's got some great opinions. I don't necessarily agree on everything, but he's got great commentary. Logical. He's very logical. Yeah. He's brilliant. He's running a tremendous organization, if not just from a business owner perspective. But he complains about how little sleep you get. He complains about it all the time. Every time I hear a pod, he's like, well, if you're anything like me, buy a mattress because your kids keep you up at all hours of the night. And he complains about his children. And I'm like, bro, why are you complaining about your children? Yes, I know you don't get as much sleep as you would like. I've been there. All of us as parents have. And that's the beauty. Like that's
the sacrifice of
that's
it.
the package deal, man. You wouldn't love them as much as if you didn't have to get up at all hours of the night and change their diaper and bring them to mom so she could breastfeed the babies. And, you know, and they're scared. And so you got to go in there and tell them not to be scared and maybe sing them a song or have a prayer or just, you know, pat their head or whatever you do.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, man. Like I get so frustrated with, oh yeah, my kid, I got my divorced parents. Oh, I got my kids. I'd like to go, but I got my kids this weekend. Ugh. Why would you say that? You'd like to go do this thing, but you have your kids. So
burden.
Yeah. I don't like that at all. And look, I don't take this as a holier than thou, or I've done that. And I probably do it more than even I acknowledge. But when I hear it and see it in others or even myself, I'm like, don't you dare. Don't you dare complain. Because you know what? There's a lot of people who are listening to this right now who have lost children as children, had miscarriages, lost them as adults, are dealing with issues, horrific circumstances. Don't you dare complain about anything with your kids. That's advice from me too.
Yeah. I like it, man. I mean, just the impact alone, right? Just considering how that might impact them being treated as a burden is
what if they,
that in itself.
What if they hear that? I already said that. What if they hear that?
Yeah.
And even if they don't, you're hearing it and you're changing your behavior based on it.
Totally. Kyle William Brown, while writing a vision and conducting the 5 whys activity, how do we address the issue of nihilism that we run into while searching for meaning related to our vision? If we have a clearly defined purpose, such as to protect and preserve freedom in human life, and ask ourselves why this is important 5 times, eventually you ask yourself, why is human life and freedom important? Could you share your why freedom and the protection of human life is valuable to you?
I'm a pretty intuitive person. I don't consider myself a very thoughtful person, a very deep person.
Yeah.
I know thoughtful means like I'm a jerk. Like that's also true. But in this context, I don't really think about it that deep. I'm just pretty intuitive. So when you say, why is human life important? Because it is. Like, I wish I could give you a better answer than that. I'm not an intellectual person. I've never really thought about that. I will say that I think, I think 2 things when it comes to why human life is so valuable. Number 1 is because of the potential that resides in every human being. Yeah. And who am I to strip away or hinder or limit another person's potential? I don't know what that person is going to become. I don't know who that person is going to serve. I don't know how that person's going to impact the world, but I believe that this is very spiritually driven belief, right? That all souls and all humans have intrinsic worth. Now, there's some that
they waste it,
betray that worth, or betray other people, and there should be punishment and consequences for doing so. Just because I believe that everybody has worth as a human and unlimited potential as a human and a divine being doesn't mean that I'm going to subject myself to evil because I think, somebody just deserves another chance. I'm not saying that at all, but I don't get to make that decision. So every human, every soul has potential and has worth, and I don't have the right to limit that, to hinder that, to steal that, to take that from another person. That's not my role in this world. The other side is that if we look at human life, so this is where it might get a little bit more philosophical or deep, is if we look at human life with this idea that there is worth, intrinsic worth and potential stored in a human, then that gives us meaning and purpose.
Totally.
Because if I believe that, Kip, you have unlimited potential in some form, then it gives me purpose to serve you.
Yeah.
Because
It
I
gives
want to
me
see
purpose.
it manifest.
Yeah.
It gives you purpose as that person, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just talking about as me looking at another person. It gives me purpose to help you manifest that potential, whether it's my children or you. And this is a big part of the reason why we're even doing Order of Man. When I started, I still have real struggles in my life, but I don't want other guys to go through that. Like, I don't want you to go through a separation. I don't want you to get so fat you're unrecognizable and feel so horrible about yourself. I don't want you to be in financial hardship. I don't want your children to be without a father. I don't want any of that for you guys. And I have found meaning because I believe so much in human potential and human worth in helping ensure, not by eliminating those obstacles, but by equipping you with what you need to help eliminate and overcome those obstacles for yourself. So if I don't believe that, if I don't believe humans have intrinsic worth, then you're right. What are we doing? That's nihilism. Yeah. For sure. That is the root of nihilism, that nobody else has any worth. It's not worth, including yourself. You don't have any worth. You don't have any potential. But here's another thought. If you believe that you have worth and potential, I think that the overwhelming majority of us believe that. Are you saying that you're different or more special than somebody else? You're not. So why would I believe that I have human worth, intrinsic worth, and potential, and yet I don't recognize it in somebody else? That's crazy. They're connected inextricably.
Totally. He also asked your thoughts on freedom being so important.
Again, I mean, my knee jerk is like, well, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
What is the alternative? The alternative is captivity. It's slavery. It's somebody else deciding what my worth is, to go back to our original commentary on the question.
Totally.
Who is another person to decide what my life is supposed to be? Whether I'm supposed to be your servant or your slave or your employee or destined to do X, Y, and Z work. Who are you to decide that for me? Who are you to tell me I can't defend my family? Who are you to tell me that I can't have an idea that is counter to your idea? Shame on you if you believe that. There's not another person who should ever be able to dictate that for somebody else. It's evil, it's satanic, and it's dangerous to humanity. Yeah. When people start thinking they're better than you and they can dictate whether it's the price of what you're offering or who you can sell what to, or how you're able to defend your family, or what viewpoints you can vocalize and which ones you can't.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, the removal of freedom is rooted in the idea that you do not believe in people's full potential, that they are capable. It's actually rooted in the idea that of nihilism, that you think you know the answer and they don't, and that they're incapable of doing so. One additional thought on freedom that I really like is I think that's where growth is. The more sovereignty that we have, the more we take on extreme ownership. And it's funny because when you think about freedom and extreme ownership and sovereignty, they're all kind of related here. And so much of the growth and chances that we have, some of the biggest growth that we have in our life is made through the freedom of choice. And by taking ownership and realizing that that's on us, and I decide for myself, it's not being projected, it's not being forced upon me, but I'm deciding to do something. I show up in a way more powerful way when I'm committed to something and I have freedoms to do the wrong and the right decision. And that is where growth is, and thus potential.
Well, you're right. You're 100% right. And what I wrote right here as you were saying that is, wrap your head around this. You can't do good without freedom.
Yeah.
You can't make good choices without freedom. Why? Because being forced to do something isn't a choice.
Totally. And we rob people. Yeah. We rob people of of superficial benefit. So let's get an example of helping the poor. There's a drastic difference, Ryan, between you saying, hey, Kip, I'm going to take a portion of your income, whether you like it or not. And if you don't like it, by the way, guys with guns are going to show up. But I'm going to take a portion of your income and we're going to give that to the needy. Versus me making a choice to actually go help them. What's the experience from my perspective? Those are two drastic experiences. One will edify me and benefit me. The other one causes resentment.
Well, but also people will think they're good because a portion of their taxes go towards projects and this and that. Well, if you didn't have to pay taxes, would you? I wouldn't. Would you?
Yeah, exactly.
No, you wouldn't.
And thus,
so you're forced to do it. Instead, if it means more if you say, hey, I pay in taxes, but that just comes out of my paycheck. But also every fourth Sunday of the week, I go serve at the homeless shelter and we bring food and we serve and we do this. Okay, that's more meaningful. That to me, it represents goodness because you made a choice to do it and you could have done 1,000 other things. I made a post about being nice. I said, nice is not a virtue that men should prioritize. And let's not get caught up in the semantics. You might call it something different, but just hear my point. That's all I'm saying. Understand my point. When I use the word nice, I think it represents a last resort for a lot of men. It's like the only tool in their arsenal. They're not tough. They're not principled. They can't speak their minds. They can't communicate effectively. They're not strong. They don't have the capacity for violence. And so they're forced to be nice as a last resort to hopefully scrape up the scraps on the table that everybody else left behind. So is that a virtue? No, it's weakness, actually. Now, again, you can fill in whatever word. I use the word kind. Kip, if I see something between you and us that I don't like in your behavior, I even have the capacity for cruelty. I can be very cruel. I can say and do things to you about you that would hurt you in some way, maybe physically, maybe financially. Those are things I have the capacity to do. Maybe not the physical side, but the rest, sure.
Yeah, you could.
Okay. But I choose not to do those things.
Yeah.
So when you do something that I don't like, instead of going off the rails, and we've had some not issues, but situations, circumstances that you could have been resentful towards me or vice versa. And instead we decided to be kind, not because we're forced to, but because we want to.
Yeah.
When I mess up, I want to apologize because I care about you. And also I care enough about myself that I can turn the other cheek, or you hope you can, and be willing to ask that you do. And that's kindness, that I have the capacity for violence and even cruelty. And in that moment, choose to do something more effective. That is virtue, not being devoid of options, but having all the options and using the most virtuous one.
Totally. Doomslayer 5986. Any injury prevention tips when training jiu-jitsu for the first time?
Just don't train jiu-jitsu if you want to prevent injuries. I can't answer that, bro.
Tap, dude. That's how you don't get hurt.
But that wasn't my issue.
That's true. But most people
wrong.
that get injured, it's ego and not tapping. Right?
Oh, it was ego. It was ego.
Well, maybe
everybody asked me, they're like, was it an arm bar? Was it a Kimura or Americana? I'm like, no. I tap. I have no problem with tapping. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But I think I can muscle guys around. And clearly I cannot do that to technical, bigger guys than me. So
totally.
Yeah, just ego. I think you're right. Just ego. Like ego. Injury prevention, I would say, and then I want you to jump in and share your thoughts, Kip, but I would say, I would actually say don't overtrain.
Yeah. Probably ease into it a little. Yeah.
I don't think there's probably 10% of the population who you'd have to tell that to. Like, I'd be one of those guys, like, don't overdo it. 90% of the population, that's not an issue. I don't know if it is for this gentleman or not.
Yeah.
Number two is, yes, just tap. Number 3, get rid of the ego. And more specifically, if something isn't working, stop doing it.
Yeah.
Like I'll get somebody in a choke, let's say a cross collar choke, and I'll get them in a cross collar choke or a baseball bat choke or something. And I'm like squeezing and it's not working. And I'm like, just squeeze harder. I'm like, no, stop doing that. It's not working. And I even have guys who just got started who will get me in something, like catch me in something, but because they're not technical with it, they don't know how to finish it. And I'll like look at, let's say cross collar choke. I'll look at them. I'm like, bro, just stop for a second. Okay. I tap, you got me. Okay. Tap, stop. And they're like, what, are you okay? I'm like, yes, I'm okay. It's not working. You're not doing it correctly. And all you're going to do is tire yourself out. And then I'm going to beat your ass.
Yeah. And then we're just sitting here for,
right.
20
and I
seconds
like it.
as you're,
I actually like it. I'm like, go ahead and burn yourself out as you try to choke me. Go ahead. Because in 10 seconds, I'm going to sweep you and I'm going to throw that same move on you, but I'm going to do it right. And you're going to be in a bad position. So if it's not working, just don't do it. Just, hey, that didn't work. Reset. Maybe I got to move my hands. Maybe I got to go to something different. And then after class, ask about it. Hey, Kip, you and I are rolling and I got you in that cross collar, but it wasn't working. What were you feeling? And you're like, oh, your hands weren't close enough together or whatever. Or one palm was down and one was up, whatever. Okay. Then you learn, but just, if it's not working, just don't do it. Just do something else.
Yeah. It's safe to say for the most part that if you find yourself grinding it out, right, and like gritting your teeth and like, there's something that needs to be perfected.
Yes.
And just assume that like you're missing some level of technique if it requires every fiber of your body to like engage to pull it off. That's probably not the right solution.
Or that thing just won't work at all.
It's not going to work.
It's not a viable
like a circumstance or the position's not right, or something's not right. Yeah.
It's interesting because you see a lot of like guys do this a lot is we'll watch a fight or a circumstance. You're like, oh man, if that happened, I'd punch that guy in the face and I'd choke him.
Yeah.
It's like, well, let's go train. And you take like very strong, athletic, capable people and you put them on the mats and they can't do anything. Yeah. Like you literally run circle. I've had scenarios where I've had guys in water who are big and strong and athletic and they're like, let's go train. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. No ego. I don't go with an ego. And I don't think the guys that I train with, I don't train with guys who are overly inflated egos anyways, because I'm not interested in getting hurt deliberately. Yeah. And so we go train and it's amazing how somebody with just 2 or 3 years of experience can subdue a bigger, stronger, more physical man. And you just don't know how you're going to be able to respond in these situations until you're then. And I guarantee all of us have an overinflated sense of ability when it comes to these scenarios.
Movies, man. It's all by watching movies.
So
yeah, you watch movies and you're like, oh yeah, I could do that. You're like, no, that's not going to work.
Or a guy gets punched 20 times and I'm like, okay, at some point, actually after that first hit, you're not waking up for 20 or 30 seconds. Like you're not getting back up and taking 10 more shots like that.
Yeah. And someone's drop kicking you while you're passed out, by the way.
Right. Right. Exactly. Or stabbing you.
Totally.
And that's the thing. Don't go down.
Yeah.
Because if you never know what's going to happen. If you go out, you don't know what's going to happen.
You might be dead man.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Last question. Is that all right?
Sure. Yep. Let's get it.
All right. Robert McClimmon. Some time ago, I heard you and Kip have some small discussion around accountability on the AMA. I would like to know your thoughts on the mechanics of accountability, how men can walk it out in a meaningful way. Thank you. And I actually am not 100% positive. And so I'm bringing this up, Ryan, because maybe other guys are wondering the same thing. I don't know what he means by the mechanics of accountability.
I like that. I like that term. I think he's just talking about the structure, the process of accountability. If I had to assume.
Got it.
Here's what I would say. And I don't know what specific scenario he's talking about with with us if we were talking about someone else's or our own scenario. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Kip, as I alluded to earlier, we've both had instances of needing to check each other.
Yeah.
Let me just throw this out, to minor degrees. I'm not talking about, knock down, drag out fights. Like, we've had just minor things that we've needed to check each other on.
Yeah. We need to course correct. Hey, let's make some adjustments here.
Yep. Yeah. So number one, there has to be permission for the accountability. Mm-hmm. Now, that can be expressed or it can be implied. So expressed would be, hey, Kip, I really want to lose weight. I know you said you wanted to lose some weight, and so I'd like to work out. We'll work out separately because we're at different sides of the country, but I'm going to call you every day, or you shoot me a text, and let's just hold each other accountable. That's expressed accountability. Then there's implied accountability. So let's say, Kip, you hired me and I'm going to come work for your department with the organization. There's going to be some expressed accountability. Hey, Ryan, this is what I expect of you. There's also implied accountability. Like, you don't need to come to me and say, hey, is it okay if I, correct you every once in a while? No, that's implied in the job. Like, you're my boss. That's implied accountability. But there has to be some measure of expressed or implied accountability for it to work. The next thing is it has to actually be crystallized. This is what I expect of you.
Yeah. Clear metrics, right?
It has to, right? If I say, Kip, we're going to record every Monday at 11 o'clock and you show up at 11:30, that's a problem. But we both know that. And guess what you do, or I do, if we're running late? Hey, Ryan, I'm running a couple minutes late. Just got out of a meeting. You cool with that? Yeah, I'm cool. Or you're cool. Good. Got it. Because we agreed to hold each other accountable. The metrics are in place. We know what time we're supposed to be available. And so those metrics need to be in place. Number 3, you actually have to do it. Yeah, meaning that when there's a situation where you fail, and I'll just use you as an example, Kip, where you fail to do something you said you were going to do, I am bound to hold you accountable to it. If I don't, then that's on me.
We don't have accountability. Yeah.
There's no accountability. And in fact, all I'm actually encouraging you to do is to continue that behavior.
Yeah.
So I have to, and it's hard. It's really hard, especially with peers. That could be your wife or a friend. With peers, it's very difficult. With a subordinate, like your children or employee, it's not as difficult. But with a peer, or even going up, and sometimes there are situations where you would, it's very difficult to do that. I would say the last thing is just make sure there's a process for review. So there's implied or expressed authority. The metrics are clear. I actually am holding you accountable. And then there has to be some sort of follow through. Hey, Kip, last month we talked about you making sure you show up for the podcast on time. And I just want to let you know, man, I really appreciate over the last month you showing up and us just getting started at the right time. Has something changed? You're like, oh no, I just scheduled it on my schedule better. Cool. That's awesome. Let's keep it up.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. We just call that a cadence, right? Some form of cadence around the accountability itself.
I like that.
This is such a great conversation because I wouldn't take anything away from what you're talking about. And then there's a bunch of like stuff we could spend another hour talking about how you can show up in a more powerful way around accountability. Right. And just as like a little teaser around that is relationship. So Ryan, you might have authority, right? And implied due to our position of, hey, I hold Kip accountable because Kip works for me, right? In regards to the Iron Council and Order of Man. And so it's just kind of implied, right? However, if the intent and my relationship with Ryan is not solid, then he's a micromanaging boss. He's a jerk, driving me hard, and he doesn't know what's happening in my life, right? And so there's so much extra things that we can make sure that we can have in place to be highly effective in this position. Imagine holding someone accountable when you know that you both have a unified focus around what's important, and you know that they genuinely care and believe in you. Man, now it's not micromanagement, it's coaching. It's guidance. It's inspiration that I get from Ryan, not necessarily just riding my ass because I failed to do something. And so there's so much that we can do from that side of the aisle to be really effective in accountability above and beyond the mechanics, of course.
It's a beautiful tie-in, and I'm not sure you planned this to transition into an ask that I have of you guys. We've got the book coming out on September 27th. It's called The Masculinity Manifesto. And we're really trying to blow this one out of the water to help you guys, of course, but also to grow the movement. And so we would love to get pre-orders from you guys on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you pick up your books. There's going to be an electronic copy. I'm working with an audio engineer right now to do the audio book as well. But the subtitle of The Masculinity Manifesto is How a Man Establishes Influence, Credibility, and Authority. And you need to have all three, especially as it relates to accountability. Authority is what most men are after, but believe it or not, it's the lowest tier of accountability.
Yep.
Right? Because if I have a boss who's hired me to do a job, he can dangle something over me to get that done, which is, in this job, income and my job. Like, that's a pretty big pull. And my friend, Brett Bartholomew, he's a strength and conditioning coach who's moved into psychological coaching and life coaching, has a great book called, man, now it's going to escape me. Gosh dang, I feel bad now. Conscious coaching, I think is what it's called. Conscious coaching. But he talks about this framework of complacency versus commitment. So if all you're doing is you're operating on authority, so let's say, for example, you want your kids to clean their room, that's a plea from authority. Clean your room. Why? Because I said so. That's authority. You will get commitment.
Yeah.
They will do it.
Get some work done. Yeah.
Or excuse me, you'll get compliance. Excuse me, you'll get compliance. They will comply because there's a punishment, but you won't get commitment. So instead of worrying so much about authority, instead really focus on how to build influence with people, which means that you have the ability to sway their thoughts, beliefs, patterns, words, behaviors, actions. And the best way to do that is through building up credibility. Yeah. So when you listen to this podcast, I have to speak from a position of credibility. And if I do, and you believe I'm a credible source of information for men, then I'm going to be more influential in your eyes. And then over time, I will develop authority in your life or the other people's lives that I care about. So worry less about the authority piece and more about the credibility piece, which leads to influence, which ultimately will lead back to authority. That's the way to build it.
Totally. And to your point, that's what we do to new leaders. Oh, I'm concerned. Will people listen? Well, they won't, or they will out of authority if you're reliant on the authority. But if you're in a position of influence now without the title, easy transition, right? Yeah. Because people already see and they know that you're from a position of caring about them and not necessarily through a means of control through authority.
Well, there's one way that new leaders make mistakes in this that I've seen a lot is they think that if they get liked, then they'll have a better time. But think about what we just told you. Credibility, influence, authority. Is calling up all your workers and saying, hey guys, we're going to the bar. Let's get shit-faced and have a great time. Might make you one of the guys, but credibility is undermined.
Yep.
So as a new leader, your job is not to be liked, it's to build credibility. And credibility is genuine. It's not manufactured or fabricated. It's built through experience. It's built through knowledge. It's built through caring about people. That's how you build up that credibility.
Yeah. It's great.
Oh, all right. Go check out the Masculinity Manifesto, wherever you get books, get a pre-release copy that helps. And I think that's it that I have. Kip, do you have anything else?
No, just stay connected with us, give us feedback and help us, if not through the pre-order of the book, but also connect with us on the socials, keep the momentum going.
Awesome. All right, guys, we'll be back later this week. Until then, go out there, take action and become the man you are meant to be.